Welcome back to Two Who's Review, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today we'll be looking at the fourth Doctor story, The Leisure Hive.
Oh boy.
It's the first episode of the fourth Doctor's final run as the Doctor.
Yep, season 18. Yep.
First episode with the Howl opening titles, right?
Yes. Yes, I looked up a couple of things about it last night. Yeah, first with the Howl opening titles, new incidental music. It's being done by the Radiophonic Workshop, which I think you can actually tell fairly clearly if you listen to the musical cues. It's quite symphonic, which is kind of neat. I think I read it's the first John Nathan Turner produced story, who would have a considerable influence on Doctor Who in the years to come. I think that's all the trivia I have for
first
it.
One in the 80s?
Yes, first 80s story.
First fourth Doctor story that we're doing for the podcast.
Oh yeah, cool.
You've exercised a lot of restraint not putting Tom Baker in here sooner.
I guess so.
Let's go to the timescales.
Yeah, sure.
Out of 117 votes, this has an average rating of 6.4 out of 10.
I might go a little higher than that. But I understand why people would say that. Yeah.
I think it's about right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good, but it's messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair.
I saw it not long ago. I'm struggling to remember it. Not in a bad way. It's just so much happened. It has a 6.3 for plot.
Yeah, it's a little. The plot, I like it, but the plot's a little bit gets a little all over the place by the
end. At times it's kind of held together by a string and tachyons. 7.1 for acting. Yeah.
Yeah. I like all the performances.
6.8 for effects.
I'd
put that higher.
Really,
for the time anyway. Like a lot of the stuff they're doing is like, okay, that's genuinely good. When you get to the pharmacy, that's okay, fair enough. But like all the tachyon stuff is done pretty well.
I don't know why. I don't think the special effects are amazing, but I think, for the time, especially given it was a Doctor Who story from the 80s, it was pretty good, although we'll get into this later on, but there were a couple of bits that kind of stuck out in my mind. So I might put it a little lower than that, but anyway.
6.1 for replay value?
I think I might put it a bit higher than that, actually. I actually enjoyed this episode more than I was expecting when watching it again.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Again, I've only seen it once, so
yeah.
I don't really have an opinion on that.
One
person out of 49 said this requires a previous story to properly understand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I was a little confused as to, like, what was the Black Guardian? Is that the thing that they were talking about with the whole...
Yeah, so...
he'll find us?
Okay. Yeah, so he was the guy... Again, it's been a while since I've seen this episode, but I'll try to remember this. So the previous season, I believe, was Key to Time, and they had to go get the Key to Time for the White Guardian. But there was this weird thing, I think, that happened right at the end, where the Guardian who spoke to them was actually the Black Guardian, who's the evil Guardian, who wanted to take it for himself, and they said, no, we're not going to give you the Key to Time. And I think he'd, like, basically... He's hunting them at that point, and he would actually show up again in the Fifth Doctor, and I think finally get defeated with the Fifth Doctor. So,
okay,
yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Well, I figured it was something like that.
Yeah,
but it's not important for this episode anyway.
Not terribly.
This is, from my understanding, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, it's the 10th lowest rated Fourth Doctor TV story.
Yeah,
44.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think again, I enjoyed it more than I remembered it because it's been years since I've seen it again. But yeah, I can kind of understand that.
I'm very conflicted about this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of it was good, but so much of it I was very confused about. Like before the end, it was kind of like, okay, what? There's so much happening.
Yeah,
like
I'm glad you said that, because I felt the same too when watching it. There's a lot going on. Like, there was a lot.
Yeah, I think I've isolated one of the problems. I'm not sure if there was necessarily that there was a lot going on, but it's just the explanations weren't given like
there's a lot of
clear enough manner.
A lot of technical jargon, which, here's the thing, I don't mind that in Doctor Who. That's just kind of the nature of the show. Like, the fact that they're explaining tachyonics to this really intense degree, to the point when Romana's with Harden, and she's looking at this weird little piece, which is clearly like a plastic, like little sheets of plastic together. It's like, have you checked the inversion? Like, I've got no idea what that means. I don't mind that terribly, because I kind of like when they're doing it. They're taking those risks and being as authentically scientific as they can be, but it does make for a confusing story, yeah. And there's a lot going on. And I actually think that the two kind of big plot points and the two kind of villains that we see in it, they don't quite mesh together terribly well in the end, but we'll get into that.
Don't. It's very much two stories that run alongside each other.
And that they're like it's like. Oh yeah, pardon me.
If you can finish your
actually, no, you go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll say it up. Okay, well, if there's one,
how long can we do this with just us constantly going? No, you go ahead. Oh no, please, I insist. Oh no, I want you to go first. Go ahead.
Look, we were raised to have manners, Cuff. That's just how this works.
I think it's also that we're both pushovers.
Oh yeah, who too ironically talk over the top of each other for whatever reason.
Yes, that too. I'm sure if we were in the same room, it would be less of us talking over the top of each other and more of us both waiting for the other person to talk.
But the thing I was going to say is, if I could describe this episode, and I was waiting to say this about any classic Who episode, but I think especially this one, just from memories of me watching it as a kid, but if I could describe it anyway, I'd describe it like this. This show is bananas. Bananas. That's how I describe it. I'm sure I'm going to regret singing that when this episode goes to air, but that's fine, because I'll cry myself to sleep tonight, and that's how I'll get over that.
I think you're going to regret it less when it goes to air, and more in about a year or two when it's still online. And it's dated now when we're recording it. I can't imagine. You might get lucky and it might swing back around, as many retro memes do. So on that day, you'll be vindicated.
Anyway, so the point is, it's wacky. This thing is wacky. Like, and we'll get into this when we get into the plot. But I'm just putting it out there now. This, I think, even by classic Who standards, this episode gets pretty wacky in certain places. I kind of love it for that reason, but we'll get into it later on.
All right, synopsis. The Doctor and Romana visit the Leisure Hive on the planet Argolis, the surface of which is uninhabitable following a 20-minute nuclear war between the Argolans and their enemies, the Fermasi. The Argolans themselves are now sterile. Pangal, the youngest, was created by the Tachyon Recreation Generator, a machine that runs the games in the Hive. He now secretly plans to use the generator, modified by an Earth scientist named Harden, to recreate himself many times over, forming an army of duplicates to destroy the Fermasi. Pangal's mother, Mina, the control of the Hive, is meanwhile coming under pressure from a supposedly human financier, Brock, to sell it to the Fermasi. Fermasi agents from their planet's government arrive and expose Brock and his assistant Clout as members of a renegade Fermasi group called the West Lodge. The Doctor then reconfigures the generator equipment using components from the randomizer device previously linked to the TARDIS's navigational circus, and Pangal's plan is foiled as he rejuvenates into a babe in arms. That was the plot. If you haven't seen this episode, that all happened. And there was a lot more that happened than we didn't.
Like I said, this show is bananas.
For example, I completely skip over the first 5 minutes of this story.
Oh, of course, actually.
It is.
Oh, it was great. No, I remember watching it, and I'm like, I'd completely forgotten about the opening of it. But first off, it opens with a really long tracking shot, which is very interesting because, and incidentally, the one bit that I actually really like about this episode is the direction. it's really interestingly directed, especially given that it's classic era Who. There's a lot of great close-ups, really intimate close-ups, not just of things like the Pharmacy seeing, bits and pieces of the monster before they arrive, which is a classic sort of thing to do, and I think it helps with them, actually. But even just basic stuff, lots of really great close-ups of people's faces. When Romana and Hardin are fixing the tachyon machine, there's a bit where it's just a series of close-ups cutting between her and Hardin, and I like that because the close-ups of their faces, they're framed by the equipment, and for me, what that says is it shows that they're connected emotionally because they're both trying to fix this machine, but they're separated because of all the intense cutting of the close-ups because they're lost in their own worlds trying to get the thing fixed. So that's just a small little bit of analysis, but I really like it when I see when I can clearly see that a director in Doctor Who or anything really is saying, like, my God, here's someone who's really thinking about how it all just visually fits together, which is really, really great. So anyway, so that's how it opens, this long tracking shot. But the first incident of this whole episode.
Before we get there, I will say the tracking shot at the start of this, it confused me at first because. It's a lot of empty shots of beach chairs that have no one in them, and it's zooming along this beach for rather a long time, and we don't see anyone. And I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, so this is setting up the conflict. The TARDIS is going to arrive. They're like, oh, it's a resort planet, the Leisure Hive. Wait a minute, where is everyone? And that would be like a setup for this thing. No, it was just a minute and a half long shot to pan to the Doctor snoring. Beautiful. And then we see Romana and K9 appear, and I was like, oh, cool, I get my first retro series K9 story. And then he gets taken out of the narrative in the funniest possible way.
Yep, the episode opens with...
I was so happy with this.
With K9 dies, basically. That's how this episode opens, folks.
Romana tosses a beach ball into the ocean, and K9 just follows it. And
it's just like, K9!
Michael Scotts himself into the ocean. I don't know if you get when Michael Scott drives his car into the lake in The Office. That's what K9 does.
Yeah.
I was
a lake there, yeah.
What? And that is the inciting incident for the Doctor and Romana going to Argolis. That happens, and then they're like, oh, this is bullshit. Let's go somewhere else.
And he's not there for the rest of the episode.
He's gone! He's gone for the entire rest of the story! I assumed they were getting a new K9 model, and this was their excuse for getting rid of the old one. But, like, Jesus Christ, that was... funniest thing I've ever seen. Like this.
Well, that's the thing.
This dinky little robot dog, already struggling to operate on the sand properly. But then, like, it enters the water, and then, like, the instant it hits the ocean, it explodes.
Yeah, just sets on fire and boom. It's so.
This thing is meant to be advanced, and it doesn't know to avoid the water.
Like, when I watched it, I'm like, I do not remember that part of the episode. Is that why K9's not in the rest of it? My God. That is just... it's nuts. It's crazy.
I could talk about...
What a way to open an episode.
I could talk about that opening 5 minutes for the entire length of this podcast.
And it's so funny, because it's one of those things where it doesn't seem to have much of a point outside of... getting rid of an extra character just so they don't have too many talking heads. But also, I assume... Oh, God.
Can you imagine if there was a companion exit in the show now that was equally jarring and out of nowhere? They just, like... The Doctor and maybe two companions are, like, exploring a lava planet. A companion jumps into a volcano, and then they go, oh, let's go somewhere else.
Well, K9 comes back after this.
I need a vacation.
Well, yeah, he does come back after this, because they say in the end, oh, I'm missing K9, and I went to look up the continuity, because I'm like, my God, did K9, like, actually die? Is this when they bring out, K9 Mark III or whatever it is? No, he's back for the other episode, so they're obviously able to...
Same model?
Yeah. from what I can tell.
So it was literally just because they couldn't think of a better excuse to keep him out of the action
to get rid of
story.
Him. Which makes me wonder whether or not there wasn't some sort of, early 80s BBC behind the scenes situation where the voice actor for K9 just couldn't appear and film for episodes during those weeks, so they just thought, okay, we'll find an excuse to get rid of him.
It's not even finding an excuse.
That would surprise me.
It's writing an entire scene in in an outdoor location that we don't see for the. It's the only scene in the entire story that takes place not on a set. Like the effort that they went to, they could have just had it be a scene on the TARDIS, and it's like, oh no, K9, he can't come out for a moment. He's repairing the ship. He's going to be stuck here for a bit. They didn't have to explode him on a beach in Brighton. But I love that they chose to do that. Like I said, it was the funniest thing that I've seen for this podcast so far.
It was pretty great.
I was so happy when it happened.
I don't think I found it like ha funny, but it was just wonderful seeing them take such a weird narrative risk. It's like, let's just get rid of him.
It's just because it was so jarring. Like, this is meant to be a highly technologically advanced robot dog from the future, but he for some reason doesn't know that water equals bad. He just gets so like tunnel vision on the ball. And for another thing, like, I would have loved to have seen the scene where this dog tries to bring that ball back to Romana on its own.
Oh God!
In many ways, this scene is more fun to talk about than the rest of the episode.
We should actually probably get on to the rest of the episode because we are now creeping up to the 20-minute mark.
Can we not just keep talking about K9?
But that's why I say, the show is bananas, because it just opens with this. Anyway.
It opens with
let's move on.
So completely out of place for the rest of the episode. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I had a theory about why I feel like this episode feels very messy and confusing, and I think it's because there's no proper fish out of water character. And as fun as, like, this is my second Romana episode that I've seen. The first one I saw a while ago, it was the Dalek one that she's in, whichever one that is.
Yeah.
And
Destiny.
Destiny, that's the one. And as much as I like the idea of her as a companion, I feel like you do lose something with this dynamic. You lose the fish out of water character that the Doctor can explain things to as a proxy for the audience. Because what you replace that with is a lot of the two characters going, did you see that? Oh yeah, I did, but did you catch this thing? Yes, I do. And you don't get a lot of, well, what does any of it mean?
And
I feel like that is a big problem in an episode like this, where there is so much going on. You do need to take a moment to let the audience breathe with the characters and have a companion go, just explain this to me real quick, Doctor, because I'm confused. And they're not going, oh, okay, this is a tachyon device and it does this, this, and this. Cool.
Yeah. Especially,
you don't get that with Romana there.
Especially how full on they go with the technical jargon. Because when I watched it the second time, I looked up what tachyons are, and they're basically particles that they don't exist. They're theoretical particles that would move faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think that has much of a bearing on the episode. I mean, I don't know much about tachyonics, so anyway. But again, they
about
really
what tachyons do, and more about like, well, how do they make someone's arms disappear from their body?
Yeah, appear different. So they really go full on with the technical jargon, which again I don't mind, and I kind of admire that they're taking a risk with that. But again, it's going to be a problem in terms of accessibility of or engagement with the show, especially given this is a season opener. So
I was going to say I'm horrified for anyone for whom this was their first episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, honestly.
Can you imagine trying to make sense of what the show is? Like, would you have any clue what this show is if you only watched The Leisure Hive?
Well, the thing is, like they said, for the people who said you need previous viewing of the show to watch it, you actually do, really, because it's so
I guess that's
nutty.
True. Cut those coughs. Yeah, this episode doesn't require a previous story. It just requires knowing what the show is.
Yeah, because it's so bizarre. And incidentally, one of the weird little things that I noticed the second time watching it, near the end, when Pangals getting ready to, complete his mission or whatever, and he says, now is the rise of the new Pangal supreme race, and he says, I need an alien witness to this glory, and then Brock literally then says, oh, so that's why you're telling me all of this, and I'm like, oh dear, that's not great. That is a massive, storytelling red flag. Again, it's as if to compensate for how, as if to compensate with how confusing a lot of the other story elements are here. Again, because they go so hard on the scientific jargon.
Yeah,
they have to literally say, "Oh, yes, folks, we've realized we've made a mistake. We're going to fix this mistake. We're acknowledging the mistake, so that fixes the mistake." Yeah.
I need an alien. An alien witness. What?
So why? That's why you're telling me all this.
But legitimately, what's the point of an alien witness in this? This isn't a marriage ceremony.
Doesn't he want to kill most other alien species? He has a hatred for other races. That's a big part of his character. So.
I'm committing war crimes, but I need a witness.
Yeah. Yeah, even though you're... Oh god, yeah, that does not make sense at all now I'm thinking about it. Oh. Oh man. Anyway, that's a small detail. We'll get into that more.
I do enjoy, and I find it really interesting, the backstories of the Argolans.
Mm.
A lot of it is really fascinating.
It is.
It's nuclear war that lasted 20 minutes left their planet
and wiped out,
scorched, and all of their inhabitants sterile. And it also gave them this odd quirk of it being it made it so our metabolism is really, really great until it suddenly stops and we age decades in a span of minutes. That's a really interesting concept. And it's honestly kind of chilling. This is a better Orphan 55 than Orphan 55.
It means that the stakes are pretty intense. When those emotional moments come, they do hit hard. And it's probably one of the most interesting parts of the whole episode. Certainly one of the most interesting concepts that they're introducing. And of course, the great character conflicts between the Argolans is really just kind of great, very meaty, I think. It's probably one of the most enjoyable elements. And incidentally, I was surprised how, for want of a better term, Doctor-like this episode was. Because the Doctor's there, and he's doing stuff, and he's, making the plot go along, but, there's a lot of focus given to those side characters. More than normal, I would say.
Yeah, huge amount, actually.
Which is very interesting.
Well,
even Romana has...
That is because... halfway through the episode, the second episode cliffhanger, and this wasn't mentioned in the episode synopsis, but the Doctor gets bombarded with tachyons and becomes hundreds of years older. It's a Sound of Drums effect where instead of David Tennant aging hundreds and hundreds of years, it's Tom Baker. He did it first.
Yep. Yeah, he got there first.
And it's good on makeup.
Yeah. It's but I like that cliffhanger.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that is the only cliffhanger that has any kind of weight to it of the three.
That's
where the first one
that's
is
the thing.
The Doctor's in the chamber, and then oh no, he's
ripped apart.
Being ripped apart. Oh no, he's fine. He's out of the chamber. And then the third one, it's oh no, the Famasi are attacking. Oh no, he's gonna take the translation. He's gonna take some voice modulator and then literally go, all right, let me explain why I'm a good guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, actually, with that cliffhanger.
Which, it was funny.
Because I remember, again, because I actually watched this episode, I think, a fair few times when I was a kid. And I remember getting to that scene and feeling actually quite emotionally disturbed.
Which
I'm like,
one,
what the hell's the Doctor doing? He's letting this monster attack this supposedly innocent person. What's going on here? But then, he rips the costume off and it all works. And incidentally, the direction and the editing of that one specific tiny bit was actually really well done. Like,
that's really good. It looks for a split second like his head is like rolling back behind his back, and then like it looks like he's like the Famasi is turning him into a Famasi at first. Like it looks like that's what's happening.
Because it cuts right from the Famasi squashing his face to the head getting ripped off from behind.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Again, it's editing and directing used in such a way that you don't see, everything, but it all suggests and it really works. That illusion unfortunately gets completely ruined a couple of seconds later when we see the other guy's skin come off and it looks fake as hell. But that little bit I kind of liked. But here's the thing, and I think we raised this before with the Sea Devils, of how sometimes odd the cliffhangers are, because the way I think it would have been even more interesting is if you had the Doctor come into the room, Famasi comes in, chasing Brock terrified, then the Famasi reaching for Rock, and then cut the episode, then end it there. That would have been such an intense cliffhanger, because you think, what's going on? What is the Doctor doing? That's so scary. It's like, has the Doctor lost his mind? Oh no. And then we find out in the next episode, oh, actually no, it's this other guy's the Famasi. But having the fact that he's the Famasi revealed as the cliffhanger, that it doesn't work as well in my opinion.
No, you see, that's interesting. I think you're completely wrong there. I don't think it's clear that he was a Famasi the whole time until it's explained in episode 4. My interpretation of the cliffhanger in episode 3 is, oh, he's been turned into a Famasi. Now he's also a bad guy. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I fully interpreted that as they're doing something, and then because we've seen that before, alien creatures turning humans into more of them. Like, it's nothing new. So when it happened, I was literally like, this is body horror where he like his head falls off and then he becomes a Famasi. Like, Jesus Christ, that's dark. But then it was like, oh wait, no,
actually,
okay. It was just
this
was just a money making scheme.
The reason why I would disagree with that is because they establish the use of the human skins, I think, early on, because there's the bit where who's the guy who's working with Harden? I'm forgetting his name. The guy with the glasses who gets all cranky at him. He goes and opens a closet and... Pardon?
Is it Morix? No, Stimson.
Yes. When he goes into this room and opens this closet, and you can see in the foreground a human face, but it's not moving, it's expressionless, and he looks kind of horrified, I think. And I think that's meant to be foreshadowing, because that's clearly like a... I mean, to be fair, that theoretically could also be really messed up, because it's like human skin.
That's a testament to how bonkers this episode is, where that happened, and I remember that it happened, and I was just like, that might as well happen. I didn't connect that it was foreshadowing to something.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on, like, I am so happy that this episode doesn't do this entire alien species is evil thing.
Yes, me too.
With both the Argolans and the Famasi.
Yeah,
they both have good and bad, like you do in humanity.
And I really like sort of the themes, the thematic treatment of this episode, because all of those sort of great sort of sort of left-wing themes that crop up again and again in Doctor Who, regardless of how well...
Wait, what are you talking about? There's no politics in Doctor Who until
the 13th Doctor's era. Yeah, exactly. What are we talking about? No, but, well, again, this just goes back to...
political then, and that's why it's bad now.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, it's always had a left-wing stance to it, and I'm sure I must have brought this up with the Sea Devils, and again, even with that disconcerting ending, it's still definitely there. And as however badly certain elements of Doctor Who have aged, I even mean just in terms of sort of ethics and sort of representation, it's still a core part of it, and it is, and really almost always has been. But this show proves it. This is like, in terms of thematic expression, this is kind of exactly what I wanted from the Sea Devils. A really kind of satisfying, just emotionally satisfying theme of being pro-peace. I love the sort of the backstory of the Argolins, and the fact that they have the helmet of Theron as this wonderful symbol, not of glory, not of like nationalism, not of
shame,
supremacy, but as a grim, dark reminder of the true cost of war and of violence, which is just... I love it.
I really love that, though, because, like, it's not often that you see fictional species with their own mythology. And this isn't mythology, this is history. But it's sort of treated the same way.
Yeah, it's being mythologized, and that kind of feeds in more to the themes, because Pangal, he is kind of making his own myth about himself and the new... Pangal race, which is kind of interesting.
I do like how I'm now equating the mask thing to like a Confederate statue, and now I'm seeing Pangal as like a neo-Nazi kind of figure, and it's no.
Here's the thing though. There are, I think, almost again. This is not, I guess, my area of expertise, but as I understand it, there are kind of sort of fascist mentalities coming up with Pangal there, like when he talks about returning, to the old glory, make Argolis great again. But like the core of that attitude is a very fascist one, like the idea that, we must return to our old glory, we must fight back against, the others, whoever they are, and the only way we can do that is through bloodshed. It's the ultimate extreme example of a them or us mentality, and the only way to succeed is through violence. It's either violence or death. That's it. And that extremity, I think, comes out in Pangal as a character. And it's quite satisfying watching those sort of really meaty themes get sort of wrestled with. So I really like his characterization and the whole mythos of the Argolins themselves for that reason. So yeah, it's really cool.
I also really enjoy that the Famasi's plan is to, or at least the West Lodge, rather, their plan is to just buy the planet. Like, that's a really inventive... that's a really inventive plan for the villains in a war thing. Where it's like, look, we don't want to fight anymore either, but you've clearly lost. We want to win more. Here's some cash. Get off our planet now. I really enjoy that as an idea. And it's like, I don't know.
It feels, I don't know, I can't think of any specific historical, even current examples, but it feels very prescient. I'm not even 100% sure why, but it just does. And I love that one line where Brock says...
I can't really place why, but it's the strangest thing, because I completely agree with you.
Yeah. It feels such a... even a very contemporary theme. And incidentally, I love Brock's line where he just says, free enterprise is irrepressible. Because it's like, it's such a... It really, I mean... It seems like a very proletariat idea, showing, it's not the whole Famasi that's the problem, it's just these little faction of capitalist pigs. That's the problem. So, it's kind of great in that sense.
And again,
so
I'm really happy that they don't treat the Famasi as like an entire species of money grubbing, like, soul sucking, like war hungry bug men. Although it did make me laugh when that first thing that one guy says when he gets the voice modulator is, "I am the government."
Yeah.
Not I'm the president.
when he steals the voice
minister,
box.
Not I speak for the Famasi. I'm the government. I am the Senate.
Oh. But yeah, it's kind of great. But yeah, I like the way that they frame that in the narratives, showing the the evil corporation as kind of one of the ultimate villains. That, and again the sort of nationalistic, sort of creepy supremacy that Pangal's got going, which is really great. So those are probably the best bits of the whole story, and I really enjoyed it for that reason.
Yeah. For an episode called The Leisure Hive, we don't see a lot of the Leisure Hive.
Yeah, it's very it's
like
a very
so what is it? It's meant to be this this center of recreation that anyone can come to, and it's just like a relaxing time.
Yeah.
But we've also got this machine that detaches limbs, and that's meant to be fun, and that's like that we're using this in a recreational context as an excuse to call it the Leisure Hive because it doesn't really have anything to do with anything else. We see some anti-gravity squash, but that's about it. I think when you're like exploring the idea of like a B&B style getaway kind of thing in the Doctor Who universe, I'm disappointed that idea isn't explored a lot more because for the most part, this facility seems to be more of a scientific research place, more so than like a resort.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
It's a bit odd that they chose to make it a resort because again, it doesn't really do a lot to justify itself. Like you could very easily at the start have instead of Pangal talking to the tourists and being like, you come to light in our many recreational facilities, such as zero gravity squash and this tachyon device. Like that could very easily be a board of investors or like researchers or anything like that. And he can use that to explain the device same way. Like it doesn't. It's just so confusing why they chose to make it a resort planet because it doesn't really justify itself.
Maybe it's meant to be like a thematic thing, like a resort. Oh, it's a peaceful place made by peaceful people. Yeah, that fits together.
I guess it does.
Maybe that's what they're trying to go for.
Maybe,
but yeah, no, you're right.
The point is that they're trying to figure out a way to stop themselves from metabolizing to death, right? So, and they're trying to stay open because of the whole buyout thing. I don't know. It's just an element of the episode that doesn't quite mesh with the rest as cleanly as it could have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think. Yeah, why a resort if they're gonna do that sort of thing? Yeah, if it was meant to be a peaceful resort for peaceful people, couldn't it have been like maybe an interplanetary conference or some political thing where they're promoting peace? Maybe they could have done it that way. But yeah, why a leisure resort?
Well, I think it's because it had to feed into the whole we're not gonna sell out our planet. This is all that's left of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah,
it didn't quite mesh, but like I can see why they chose to do it. But like again, I would have preferred to have seen this concept explored a bit more because like a story like Midnight, which also takes place in a resort on a planet that is uninhabitable from the outside. And the tour bus goes off course, and that's when the stuff happens. It plays into that a whole lot more in that episode than it does in this, because you get the whole we're all tourists and we're here for a good time, and we get to see them all bonding before the actual rising action happens, and they all turn on each other. But with this, we see so little of the leisure.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit in.
Yeah, and
it's like the Doctor playing anti-gravity squash, and then
he plays anti-gravity squash, and then he goes into the machine, and he gets his head cut off, but it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like it could have incorporated itself into the thing a lot more. Like they evacuate the resort, but like you could have had the tourists being threatened by Pangal at the end, like keeping them there as more alien witnesses in order to make his plan double work. I don't get it.
Yeah, fair enough.
And look, if that's the limitations of my problems with the story, then it's a lot less than I thought it would be. Because I can't think of anything else about the plot specifically that I have a problem with.
Here's one of the issues that I had. I felt like the convergence of both villains and their motivations, I felt like they didn't quite mesh together as well as they could have. They seemed that is very true. Yeah, it's like either I wonder why they didn't just go either with crazy, militaristic supremacist or evil corporation. They didn't quite fit in together. The only reason why I can think they did fit together is because the funding from the West Lodge that they were secretly getting, if I'm remembering that right, that helped precipitate the tachyon technology, which helped Pangal, with his plan. So it kind of worked out, but it just didn't mesh as well as I think it could have. And
I think it was funding from Earth, not the West Lodge. I think the human character that we see on the screen at the beginning is the human character, but when we see him in person,
it's the Famasi, because he's
a Famasi.
Yeah. He said he never left Earth, so it's very that part didn't work out terribly for me. I think this is one of those situations, and I don't doubt that we'll probably say this with a fair bit of Classic Who, that the sum is greater than the whole.
They had two different stories, and
they tried to make it come together.
Neither a single story was big enough for 4 episodes, but they were similar enough that they smushed them together,
and it
almost works.
And I think of the two sort of subplots of Evil Corporation versus Dying Race trying to revive it, the Dying Race one is more interesting to me. I found that that was the meatiest part of the episode. The story I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of complexities and nuances there.
Well, it's also, I think it's mainly because you don't really get a sense of what the West Lodge plans to do if they're successful in buying Argolis. Because it's like, okay, we've given them the money, we've got the rights to the planet. Are we planning to kill everyone now? Because we could have just done that to begin with. Are we going to make them leave, and then what? Like, what are our plans for Argolis once we buy it that A, justify the purchase and not just an assault, but B, are sinister enough that it warrants this being an evil plan?
The only indication of what they would do with it that we get is when the Famasi representative of the government says, they're going to use it for their illegal activities because they're a criminal organization.
Oh yeah, they're the vaguest possible.
Yeah, again, nothing, not like solid, genuine justification. Just they're criminals, they're the baddies. Let's
Yeah.
So it doesn't. The whole thing just doesn't quite gel together as well as I think it could have. But overall, even if the sum is greater than the whole, I enjoy the pieces of that sum. They are very enjoyable, and for those reasons, I actually enjoyed it more than I was expecting to, because I knew vaguely that this had not a great reputation amongst Who fans, and I was expecting it to be, maybe this will be like really terrible. Again, don't get me wrong, it was wacky. It was about as wacky as I was hoping for, in some ways even wackier, but the good bits I really enjoyed.
I think that I will enjoy this a lot more on a rewatch now that I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because you don't get a lot of solid explanations up front, for a lot of it leaves you going, eh?
Yeah.
But I think once you know it all, you'll be watching it back going, ah.
I had a very funny experience after watching this, because the first time I watched it, looking at Pangal, and I'm like, God, I know that actor from somewhere. I'm having weird flashbacks. What the hell is going on? Looked it up. It's David Haig, the guy who plays Steve Fleming from The Thick of It, and I had a moment where I'm like, holy heck.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. I had that exact reaction. I'm like, now I can't unsee it. That's all I see now. It makes perfect sense. And it also makes perfect sense as why he's this kind of crazy, ranty, aggro guy, because it's basically who he is in The Thick of It. And
so what you're saying is that this guy has been a villain to both of our favourite Doctors.
Yeah. And it's also, this is another tiny little tidbit, but the episode where Steve Fleming is introduced in The Thick of It, one of the opening bits of dialogue is when Nicola Murray sees a cluster of empty water bottles, and she says, it looks like it's something out of effing Doctor Who.
Oh my god.
So, I know, that's a tiny little detail, but that just made me laugh. But the thing is, Pangals got also a smarminess to him, like a real, oh, I have anger bubbling just under the surface, but I've gotta make nice with people. But that's exactly who he is in Steve Fleming. It's just in Steve Fleming, it's kind of exacerbated even more. So that was really funny.
That is amazing.
And what's also kind of surprised me a little bit was he's really young in this episode. I think it was only 25 when the story aired. So yeah, but now that I know it's him, I will never be able to unsee it now. It makes so much sense. God, that was funny.
What else is there to talk about?
The ending, I guess. I kind of like that bit that they did sort of do a twist where, because you're wondering, oh, Pangol's in the machine, what's going to happen to him? Is he going to get ripped to pieces? Is he going to age? No, he gets turned into a baby. Which is,
it's nice.
It's yeah, and it's kind of an interesting sort of twist, because most Doctor Who villains, they either die or they get imprisoned or they get, blasted to bits. But no, he turns into a baby, and
before that he goes into the machine with the helmet on.
Yeah.
And I'm there thinking, that's really clever. They've put him in with the helmet on so that when he clones himself, they don't have to actually
show the faces,
put the same face over and over again. But then it's like, no, the real reason is because it's actually the Doctor.
Yeah.
And he's been de-aged by the machine. That was a really it's strange. A lot of this feels like something that would happen in a New Who story, where it's like at the end of part 1, he goes in the machine and gets super old, and then a lot of the second episode is spent with him old and out of action, and then at the end, there's the big reveal. And it's like, the Doctor's back. Like that's what a lot of the when he's taking the helmets off and it's Tom Baker underneath. That's what a lot of that felt like. I kept imagining Murray Gold's triumphant music underneath as each helmet gets revealed, because it really feels like that. It's the kind of narrative progression that wouldn't be out of place in revived Who.
Yeah, I can see that. It does. Yeah, it's an interesting twist, and I can see. Oh, it's the Doctor, really. Yeah, I can see that happening in a new Who episode, which is kind of interesting. Incidentally, this is that bit, the March of the Pangals. That I kind of loved it watching it, because it looks just as bad and just as dumb as I remember it.
Oh, you mean when they're on the screen and they're not
when it's so clear that they're just
swinging their arms to the side.
They've duplicated the image, clearly, which they do kind of effectively, but then to show that it's an army marching forward, it's literally just a replication of the same image, walking in place with the camera zooming in, and it's like, man, this is why people don't like special effects in Classic Who. This is why. And, and it was funny, but even when I was a kid, when I watched this episode, I thought, yeah, that looks really goofy. And when you combine it with the very melodramatic, militaristic music, I'm like, this is pretty low budget, isn't it? This is very DIY.
I love the phrase "March of the Pangals." Because isn't there a movie called March of the Penguins?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I imagine.
Yeah.
Just the Antarctic tundra, a snowstorm obscuring vision, but then through the fog, you see a bunch of just 3-foot bird-like creatures with long yellow coats on and big gold helmets, just swinging their flippers from side to side.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realise that they're not actually moving forward. The camera's just moving forward because they're standing still in the snow and they're just swinging their arms and having the time of their lives.
It's so...
But they should never drop their eggs. Otherwise they'll become happy feet.
It's so... That bit, yeah, I have to... Again, even to me, who's a fairly seasoned Classic Who veteran, my god, that bit looks so dumb. It's so dumb. But it just goes back to one of the things that I've said before, where I love it. I love it for doing that. And this episode is a really good case, in my view, for showing what again, I think an honest Classic Who fan has to kind of admit about the classic series, which is, on one hand, yes, a lot of these risks, especially with the special effects department and even with the story department, they're not pulling them off terribly well. There are flaws, and that's going to be noticeable, especially to a new Who fan. But within that context of trying to really do something different and interesting and innovative, some of those risks are actually paying off pretty well. Again, I go back to the scene where where Brock gets his face ripped off. The way that's directed is done quite well, and it's something that the way it's directed and edited is a very classic Who way of doing it. So this episode is a good case study of why I, as a classic Who fan, love the classic series, but I'm also able to admit its flaws and the mad kind of flailing it does in trying to do these interesting, strange things and take these risks, whether or not they pay off. That's what I love about it, that they're willing to take these risks at all. So yeah, the shot of the March of the Pangals looks fake as all hell, but at least they're trying to do something. At least it's interesting and kind of sort of sincere. And, you know, maybe there is a bit of nostalgia goggles coming in here. Maybe if I saw that kind of mistake in New Who, especially in a Chibnall episode, maybe I would be a lot harsher. I'm not sure. But, like, those mistakes just seem so much more endearing in the context of a classic Who episode than they would be in a revival, in many revival Who stories, especially a Chibnall story. So, yeah, I think that's just worth remembering, especially in a story like this.
And here's another thing I love about the canine scene. It's so great when he starts going for the ocean and Romana's like, "No, canine!" But then the moment after he explodes and she puts him on the doctor's lap, she's immediately transitioned to, "I want a better holiday." It's like, as Canine's about to die, she's distraught, but when it happens, she's like, "Okay, that's done."
You missed the Brighton Pavilion again, Doctor. Gosh darn.
Damn it.
Time to go to the distant future on a radioactive planet, which they knew from the start because Romana says, "Oh yeah, most of their species was wiped out in a short war, and it's radioactive."
Argolis is an orphan planet then. It's got to be. Like, there's a lot of similarities between this and Orphan 55. You know, recreational facility on a uninhabitable planet. There are monsters.
Yeah.
Outside trying to get in. Yeah, it's weird.
That is funny. That is funny.
We've bookended the discussion. We've come back around to K9. Shall we give our ratings?
Yeah.
Bit of a shorter discussion, but it's that kind of episode.
Yeah, it is. It's ironic because the plot is so complicated and yet there isn't heaps and heaps to discuss with the plot, but maybe it's because it is so kind of confusing. And again, I'm glad you said that as well, because I watched this thing twice, and even when I got to the end, I'm like, I'm still not 100% sure on anything. I just thought, oh, maybe that's me. But no, okay, it's just the way the episode's written. I'm glad that it's, you know, it's not just me. Yeah, I guess that's just the nature of the episode. But overall, I'm gonna go with a 6 for me, because again, it is definitely flawed. This plot points don't come together. There's flaws with the special effects, but the performances I really enjoy. The backstory of the Argolans I really love, and the good bits for me, they're so interesting and exciting. They kind of outweigh the muddled story and the flaws in it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 6.
I have the exact same opinion as you. It's entertaining, it's fun, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. It doesn't mesh together in the best way possible. It doesn't do a lot for first-time viewers. It's not a standout episode, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Alright. Job done. Another episode of Classic Series Who.
What's
ticked off the list.
What's your score?
Oh, 6. I
Oh, right, yeah, pardon me. Okay, cool.
Agreed with you on that one. Another episode of Classic Series Who Done. We are slowly but surely making our way through them.
I now have to go off and think of what the next Classic Who story is going to be that we'll look at, but we'll...
Well, you've got some time to fill that, because next time we're going to be looking at the two-part revived series story of Aliens in London and World War III.
Exciting stuff.
Attacking them both at once, but it's our first appearance of the farting Slovene.
Honestly,
yeah, fun.
I think I remember you saying that element, the farting Slovene, really bothered you. It doesn't bother me as much, but on reflection, like, yeah, that's a bit dumb, isn't it? Oh well, we'll discuss it.
Maybe I'll have softened on it by now. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, yeah, that's the Leisure Hive.
Thanks for tuning into this discussion. I've been Alex.
I've been Fitz.
And until next time, may your Who's be reviewed. That makes no sense.
And may your Pangals march.
may the Pangals march to the beat of your own drum.
Exactly. Marching towards freedom. Well, actually, no, that wouldn't really work, would it?